Hello everyone, this is Ross at Teacher Talk, at the most influential blog on education in the UK. Today I am delighted to be joined by Ben Brown. Ben, a former deputy head teacher. We're going to unpick his history and find out a little bit more about him, but he's also the founder and director of a great little network called EdRoundtables. Ben, how are you?
I'm good, thanks Ross. Thanks for the welcome and thanks for having me on.
No, it's lovely to talk to you. Now, we're going to go deep here, as we said just offline before we pressed record. So we're going to unpick toxic school culture, your own life as a teacher, what EdRoundtables is, and we'll see where we end up along the way. But can we start off with a little kind of synopsis of you? Let's start with just your teaching experience, first of all.
Okay, so I guess my teaching experience, I've got 17 years of primary teaching under my belt.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember when I qualified now. God, it's that long ago. 2001-ish. 2000. God, it's been that long ago. I can't remember. I started out doing the supply routes. Everyone I knew on the course was all frantically applying for jobs, and I didn't want to. I was a mature student, so it was sort of
Okay.
I want to find a place that I want to work. And the best way of doing that, I thought, was to go on supply, hone my skills, actually check out a lot of the schools, see what they were like. I don't know if it's true, but as a man, I tended to end up doing supply in difficult Year 6 classes, particularly on Fridays. So that was a lot of my experience.
Maybe that's when they planned their kind of PPA for the week ahead, wasn't it? And you had to do the cover of Year 6 Friday afternoon. Were you a better teacher on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon, out of interest?
Probably Tuesday, I'll be honest.
Tuesdays, okay.
Tuesday was all right by Tuesday. Monday, it was sort of like, right, this is going to work, and you go in with good intentions, but some.
Well, I think it's the shock after the weekend, isn't it? I believe Hegarty Maths, Craig, who does the Hegarty Maths, it's Paul Hegarty, Craig Hegarty. I forgot his name. That's bad. His website, all the collections of maths homework across the country. Apparently, Tuesday's the most popular day to hand in homework. I suspect because teachers forget or kids forget to do it and remind you on Monday and perform better on Tuesday. Right, okay, give us a synopsis of what's EdRoundtables, and we'll come back to both these topics as we go through.
EdRoundtables is, I find it hard to put into words, it's essentially a tribe of head teachers, all like-minded, nice. Who are there to support each other. It's like professional development through conversation, so peer discussion.
Right, nice.
So there's lots of sharing, lots of opening, being vulnerable. So the idea is create a safe space. So it's a bit like the Vegas of education, I guess. What happens there stays there.
Okay, I like it. I might have to join. Right, so I'm going to unpick the why and the mechanics of how it came to be and actually what happens in that network. Before I do, I'm just going to apologise to Colin Hegarty. I've just double checked. My apologies for a great bit of software. But Ben, can I rewind you back to your 16-year-old self? And could you tell me what you were like as a kid at school, please?
I was actually generally well behaved. Used to try and keep my head down. I'd had a bit of miserable time in school.
Right, generally is quite a loose term, isn't it?
Yeah. I did get involved in a few things that I probably shouldn't have done, but generally got away with it.
Okay, so let's not go there. Okay.
It never appeared on my reports or anything like that.
Any memories of a teacher and why at that time?
For secondary school, I had a really good form tutor, actually. She was bonkers, Miss Dashko.
Right, okay.
She was
bonkers in a good way.
Yeah. Ukrainian via Todmorden.
Right, okay. And where did you go to school? Area?
I was in southeast London.
Okay,
so that's why I was born and bred up until I was about 18, and then left for uni.
Right, and what happened next after kind of where was university?
I've been to university a few times.
Right.
Started off at York Uni doing archaeology.
Yeah.
Did that for a year and realised I hated the academic side of it.
Right.
I wanted to be out doing the digging and the physical stuff and exploring. I think I wanted to be Indiana Jones still. was the problem.
Okay.
And the lectures tended to be in those dark rooms where they turn
Yes.
the lights down, slides would come on, and within
Right.
5 minutes I was asleep.
Yeah,
couldn't help
I
it.
think I would be too. So where did the teacher conversation happen?
So I dropped out of uni, did various things for a few years, including construction, retail, odd jobs. Spent a
Right,
year
real
travelling
wide
around.
mix. Okay.
Ended up at uni again, learning quantity surveying, but they weren't paying me enough at the job for me to carry on doing it. I asked for a wage rise. They said they couldn't do it, so I said, right, I'm off, going back to uni then.
So off you went again.
Finally went back to uni. What was I, 20?
Mid-20s.
Something. Did geography and PE.
Okay.
Came out of that, was looking around for stuff, but I was too old for most of the, the apprenticeships and the postgraduate stuff. They all wanted somebody who was 20, 21, who was willing to travel anywhere. I'd met my wife by that point, and she wasn't my wife, but, we're on that road, and wasn't prepared to move around, so couldn't get anywhere. Was helping a friend's son out with maths. Turned out I was all right at doing that. So they said, well, why didn't you be a teacher? I was like, I'm doing nothing else.
Right.
Why not? Go and give it a go. See what that's like. And
So 17 years later, where was your kind of teaching experience?
Across, it was broad range, mostly in York and the vicinity of York.
Okay, all primary schools in York.
All primary schools in York or the vicinity of, yeah.
And did the deputy head position happen accidentally, or was that a kind of calculated and aspirational type move?
I initially didn't want to do any senior leadership because I had a young family. I just thought, I don't want to give up the time. I want to be able to turn around and say, do you know what, it's 3:30. My daughter's playing a football match. My son's doing something. I'm off every now and again, which I didn't feel I could do as SLT. I think that's changed actually now in terms of workload and what people expect from staff. So not initially. I sort of, the deputy head left, and I'd sort of been there school for 6 years.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, my kids had left home, are at uni now, so it was like, probably now's the right time to start thinking more seriously about a career rather than doing what I was doing. Did you enjoy school leadership despite its challenges? Yeah. Some of it, yes. Some of it, no. I think being a deputy head, you're in a really interesting spot with. You don't have overall say on everything, so you've got to support the head and deliver what the head's vision is, regardless of whether you always agree with things. And I think sometimes that can be challenging if you're in the wrong school, which is where I think I was. And also because I was still teaching, so it's getting the balance of those roles right. The fact that you're collaborating with teachers, but you've also got responsibility and expectations over and above that as well. So I think it can be a tricky place.
Could I just, for a kind of historical, chronological timelines, what I'm just going pop to your website. In 2017, you write, after 16 years of teaching, you kind of started to do education roundtables, I suppose. If you can forgive me, I'm going to read this second paragraph, which resonates with many teachers, including myself. So here it is, listeners. The long hours, the stack of marking, the demands of preparing children to pass tests, achieve standards, tracking data, planning outstanding generational lessons, differentiating for the least and most able, managing behaviour, communicating with parents, jumping through government hoops, and all the many other jobs that teaching involves took their toll. As it does for many, I felt broken. Could we unpick that a little bit? So we know that teaching is tough and there's millions of things to do, but I guess that was a bit of a crisis moment for you, or a light bulb, or a kind of work-life balance family thing?
Yeah. I was teaching deputy, and it got to the point where I was doing 90-hour weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't feel I was doing either job as well as I could, but other than throwing more hours at it, I didn't know how to do either job better. Does that make sense? I was
there myself. I was doing 60 to 80 hours as a deputy in Westminster, and my blog was already a full-time job then that I was doing part-time after school hours, and I was doing 100+ hour weeks. So one, I was failing as a father, as a husband, being a wannabe blogger or whatever else as a hobby, and my deputy job and my teaching, which I loved. I started to drop balls and not feel that I was doing as good as I wanted to. And I guess I also started to realise that I didn't want to be a head teacher. So did EdRoundtable start at that point, or was it already kind of lurking away for a few years?
No, it didn't. I mean, I crashed out. I didn't have a job to go to. I couldn't even leave the house for about 6 months. So I was actually completely...
Right, so a real low moment.
Completely destroyed, yeah.
So I guess, 2017, the dialogue of teacher and mental health was still quite new, I think, around that time, wasn't it? It was there, but I think the resources and support was quite hard to find, I believe. What's your perspective looking back?
There was talk about workload, but that was about it that I'd really sort of come across in terms of well-being and mental health. When there were things done like cakes in the staff room and that sort of stuff, but
yes. So cake, not culture. Whereas it's culture first, cake second. But...
yeah, it just made me fat more than anything.
So obviously you took 6 months out to look after yourself and stuff, which is important. And I'm sure there will be lots of challenges with that. Employment as for one, and your kind of physical recovery. So that question on EdRoundtables, when did that start?
Okay, so it was an idea that I'd had from watching and seeing various bits and pieces and reading stuff, and it was sort of like, well, if I'd had a network where I'd been able to speak to somebody and perhaps I would have had the answers I needed about various things, because I think a lot of our time is spent reinventing stuff,
yes,
or learning how to do stuff differently.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there are any shortcuts, because every school context is different. So sometimes what works in one school doesn't work in another. But at least having the discussion might have made a difference to me. So that idea was always there. It wasn't really EdRoundtables at that point. It was just sort of we've got we should be talking more. How can we make this happen? While I was doing that, I was learning to be a salesman online.
Okay.
Selling
what? Selling anything?
All sorts of stuff. Most of it was stuff like web marketing and
right.
that sort of stuff. I was doing it for various American companies. And one of the people that I was selling stuff for, I wasn't a very good salesman because I didn't care about what I was selling. That was my problem.
I was going to ask you next to sell me something on your table, but we'll come to that later. Right, okay. Now, we also connected some time ago about toxic school culture and stuff. Give me your thoughts on, or at least maybe some experiences you've had on that particular topic.
I think schools can be toxic for different reasons. They can be toxic because of the leadership, who have no consideration for people underneath or anything else, and are just... I hate to use the word, but potentially narcissistic in terms of it's all about them.
Yeah.
Schools can also be toxic because you don't fit in with the culture. It's the mixture between you and your values and everything else isn't right. There are lots of different schools out. There's lots of different values that people have when they go into, and reasons for going into school leadership and developing the culture. And sometimes it's just that you don't fit in with that culture. And I don't think it's necessarily the culture's wrong, because it's working for those people who are there, who turn around and say, well, actually, I really like working here. There's nothing toxic. So I think there can be that mismatch. And sometimes it's the culture itself hasn't evolved fully. There's a great book that I read a while ago. Hang on a minute.
You got it to hand?
I have, yeah. I'm constantly going through it, which is this one, which is quite interesting.
So for people listening on the podcast, because we're watching this, tell us what it is and who it's by.
Okay, it's a book called Tribal Leadership, which is by Dave Logan, John King and Haley Fisher Wright. Now, it's based on American businesses But the concept of it is that there are natural groups within organisations, and your organisation as a whole can be formed by a group. And the idea that there's 5 sort of tribal stages that you go through. And the idea is that actually if you can work together, you can elevate them up. So it's stage 1 is like your gang culture. Everyone's just out for themselves. The only reason they're together is to fight against an unfair world. You know, it's often violent. Life sucks. It's horrendous. The next stage 2 is when people focus on themselves and say, well, my life sucks, and it's all about them. So, you try and change anything and people look at you like, what, are you mad? That's just going to be too much hard work for me. Why do I want to do that? So you get that very self-centered approach. And if everyone's like that, then nothing really happens. You're all fighting each other. The stage 3 then is the idea, and this is where a lot of people are, is the I'm great. I'm really good at what I do. And there's actually competition between people. So everyone's trying to be the best leader, the best teacher, the best whatever it is, which can be quite good because, healthy competition does mean we strive to improve, but at the same time it leads to a bit of backbiting, undermining, undercutting each other. And
well, I also think it leads to that undercurrent of mental health pressure that, Ross looks amazing and Ben needs to pull his socks up, and teaching awards might be listening to this, but I've been a teaching award and I've won one in the past, but I often, when I'm sitting there on the judging panel, I think, am I rewarding the person for their brilliance, or am I really highlighting somebody because they've clearly put in an extortionate extra number of hours behind the scenes to achieve this extra special of greatness? And am I inadvertently promoting this as a way of getting a teaching award? And it's a tough one, that. So I often now, as a judge, really look carefully at trying to celebrate people that might just do it as part of their job, not necessarily putting in thousands of hours.
It is, and I think that's part of the problem. Is that's the culture that was certainly encouraged by Michael Wilshaw, Michael Gove, and those kinds of people. It was all, this is competition. This is what we should be doing. We should be banging in the hours. Anyone who isn't buying into this should be, on their way.
Cast aside.
And I think that was certainly the situation in the last school I was at. It felt like that at times. There was a lot of, well, they're better. You should try. You as the deputy head, you should be setting the best example, doing everything perfectly, which is the one that then leads you to doing stuff.
I want to move back to EdRoundtable. So 5 years on, and getting through the pandemic as a self-employed business as well is not easy, and we'll talk about consultancy in a moment. But I also suspect you now see you talk to lots of teachers and school leaders, and you've learnt quite a lot in the last 5 years, and probably trying to avoid all those nasty bad things you've experienced or seen or read about, and trying to promote the opposite. The question is, what kind of things are you doing with your network? Who's in it? Range of people, locations, that type of stuff. Give us as much as you can.
So at the moment we're at about 40 schools, ranging from Cornwall up to Cumbria. We've got a mixture of schools, so we've got some tiny village schools with two or three classrooms, 2 or 3 teachers in it, up to schools. I think the biggest school's got 600 pupils. So it's a really large range of context. Infants,
all primary,
juniors,
or you got any secondary?
All primary. I'm working on a secondary network, but they're harder to get involved with stuff. Primary just seem to throw themselves into it. Secondary seems to be a little bit wary. I don't know if there's an element of competition or... Well,
there's that, and maybe it's you've got a larger network around you as a secondary. I always had 250 staff around me every day and 2,000 kids. Primary, we're in Yorkshire now. My son's in a 1-form entry. It's 6-7 class teachers, a couple on the leadership team, and a few support staff, and the network's much smaller. So tell us about some of the stuff that they do when they come together in your round table.
The agenda's set by them, so it's actually one of the current challenges. So when we started out, which was March 2020, just before the pandemic hit.
Right.
It was just starting. I put a tweet out onto Twitter saying, look, I've had this idea. The problem I'd had before, no one had heard of Zoom. So I'd been contacting head teachers, and I tried physical ones didn't work because no one had any time. So I said, what about Zoom? No one had heard of it.
Right.
As soon as the pandemic kicked in, it was sort of like, I've got this idea. Who wants to take part? We'll talk about things, the challenges you face, and boy, were there challenges over those. Certainly over the first six to 8 months. So people sort of leapt at the chance. So we had, people like Chris Dyson at Parklands, Kirsty Stubbs, who was at Boothroyd at the time, Lee Hill. There's about 20 people altogether. They talked about everything that was going on. At the time, we were typing up and releasing the report, so the conversations I was typing up and sending out. So we were talking about things like, expectations for home learning, for example. What are people doing? How do you manage it? Things like supporting parents and pupils who aren't, so safeguarding, all those sorts of things were part of the conversation. What else did we look at? Transition was a big one. I think when we released that, we had over 4,000 downloads on the site, and I know it was shared widely across email networks as well. There's a couple of people said, "Oh, we've got this through the email," which was absolutely brilliant because it meant it got a really wide viewing. And transition at the time was a massive issue.
And so from bringing all these people together and talking about the issues, I think I spotted this on your website also. We have the system has its challenges, but it also has its own solutions. Give us some insights from the conversations that you're exposed to, not necessarily the challenges because we know them, but some of the good ideas, some of the messages you're seeing and hearing time and time again.
Most of the messages I see and hear are aimed at making things simpler and easier for people. So it might be a conversation about, it might be something as simple as what are you doing for your CEF or your SIP or whatever, or your SDP, whichever document it is that you choose to be using. How are you feeding that back to governors, for example? So that might be a typical everyday conversation. And people will come up and say, well, this is the pro forum I use, this works really well. And there's a lot about condensing and cutting out stuff. It might be another conversation we had recently, actually, bit of promotion here for somebody else, which is the pupil book study.
Okay, nice.
So when new ideas are coming out, how stuff like that being implemented in school, what do you need to do beforehand? What's the impact? How are you prepping staff for it? So there was a whole conversation for that one around, actually, we've done a lot on Rose and Shine, we've done a lot on coaching so that teachers are really ready for this kind of change. Because it is a big change, and you've got to manage change as well. But the idea behind it is always, let's make things simpler, easier. Let's have bigger impact for less work, for less effort.
So on that note, what great workload ideas have you seen? Whether it's curriculum or assessment, any golden nuggets?
biggest golden nugget. It's weird, isn't it? When you're not in a school anymore, you're not quite sure what the impact of what people would choose to do is. So I think,
or maybe what people have shared in the group that you thought, oh wow, that's a great idea.
A lot of it has been around things like, one of my favourite ones is certainly around marking and how people are expected to mark and what the challenges are. I think that's quite universal now in terms of what people do. It's actually, let's cut out, let's do whole class feedback. Let's actually give oral feedback. We're working with specific groups while we're going round, so let's not have to do
the tick and flick,
all of that tick and flick stuff. Planning as well. It's like, what do I need to see? What do I need to see in those sorts of conversations? As a head teacher, what's my expectation? Well, actually, the planning's almost irrelevant if what's coming in the books is good. If when I go and do a just general walking around the classroom and I see something, I can see what the practice is like, and that seems to be the general attitude of a lot of the heads. They do check, they do look at books, and there is
that part of life that's needed,
but it's that part of stuff as a leader to check, because you do need to check.
Of course you do.
on.
You do. let's switch the conversation. So, EdRoundtables, the website, Ben, for that is educationroundtables.co.uk for people listening. So we'll shout that out again in a moment.
There's a shortcut for that as well, which is
what is it?
edrt.co.uk. Redirects there.
There you go. Fantastic. Right. I want to talk about the small army of educators who support the profession behind the scenes, which sometimes Amanda Spielman and others call sometimes selling snake oil. Now, I think that perhaps references to people maybe monetizing the whole Ofsted process, but not the likes of you and I who are doing good stuff behind the scenes. And there's a bit of I don't know, consultancy gets a bit of a bad reputation, at least on the education Twitter circuit here or there. But you and I both know it's not without its challenges, and there's the moral purpose that drives us. Yes, we need to make a pound to pay our bills, etc. The question, without me going through lots of interesting history, the question, I guess, is what do you love about it, and what do you find the hardest working for yourself in education?
I love it because you feel as though you're making a difference. So I don't always feel as though I'm doing much. I just try and connect people and support people, share ideas. And because I listen to what other people are saying, I make notes and record stuff. Someone says something like, you need to check this out, try this, and gathering lots and lots of ideas. I've got my own ideas as well, that you try and sort of suggest to people and move things forward. So, I mean, I put together one of the things I really loved. Actually, I put together an event, a head teachers conference, which is only just this weekend gone.
I saw, yeah.
And it was all about building community. So it's actually told the story of, as a leader, discovering your why, turning that into, but what's your community why? What's your community's purpose? How do you share that? What are your values? How do you communicate values, not just to your staff, but also to the parents and the children? What is it that connects you? Because that's the thing that puts bums on seats, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's what schools to a certain extent are about. It is bums on seats. You do have to do a little bit of selling because your viability as a school depends on the number of children you get through the doors. But if you can communicate really well, and for me, marketing is really good communication, and you can learn a hell of a lot from it. If we can communicate what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, and the values we've got for that, and then share the successes and everything else, then you can start to build the community. So it's everything. So we had some great people speaking. So we had Vic Carr, Happy Heads. She came down.
Vic. She's great.
She's amazing. Adrian Bethune.
Yes, Adrian. I know.
Again was fantastic. John McGee, who did Kindness Coach, he did some stuff on values. Mm-hmm. Emma Kell, Clem Stewart, who were amazing.
So all good souls.
All amazing people. And it's telling that whole story. So doing that sort of stuff, I really, really love. It's hard on the other side.
Give me the hard bits.
Sorry, I talk too much. So it's hard on the other side is sometimes knowing how to price yourself. Does that make sense? I think that's one of the toughest things as a consultant, because you're like, I've got a mortgage, I've got growing electricity bills, I've got all this stuff, I've got to put food on the table and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, it's got to be where you're offering amazing value to people, so it becomes a no-brainer. It's not like can I afford that? It's like I've got to afford that.
Yeah, no, some of the questions I was going to ask you, what tool, I still feel like an NQT in this whole marketing business side of my consultancy life. But you also realise that teaching does teach you a lot of things that are maybe organic and not refined. And I guess now away from the busy classroom, you can refine these skills a bit more, read and search and kind of connect with other people. So the question again is, what tools have been your lifesavers? What kind of methods are you using to refine your strategic business plan, or your kind of 5-year plan, or whatever it might be? And there's a lot of different questions there. So let's start with what are your tools to help you work smarter as a business?
I love Kanban boards, so I'm a
I do. Yeah,
it's lists, and you can see what you've done, what you need to do, move things around.
I've been using it for 5 years. I've moved to Streak now though, and I have to say it's highly efficient. It allows me to, so the 2 or 3 other people that work with me, we can all see each other's emails on one place. There's no copying and pasting over from Trello. I know you can synchronize your emails. It's a bit of a digital Kanban board also, but you've got the whole mail merge feature in there, and it sucks all the emails in. So at different stages of your Kanban board, it can automate the process for you. And for me, for 50 quid a month, it's a real lifesaver. Whereas I used Trello for 5 years. I think I wish I had Trello as a teacher, actually, because it would be a great lesson planning tool, I think, curriculum plan tool.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I use a mailing system as well. So I've got a newsletter mailer, but I don't really. I should use it for newsletters, but I tend to just use it to keep the head teachers up to date. I've got plans because we're putting together teacher action groups next year, so the teachers are going to be involved. So I'll have to set up a whole sequence then that'll generate automatically. So when something's happening, here's your reminder. Here's your reminder.
Yeah, there's a whole and just doing those things takes so long, but you can see that pipeline from connection on Twitter to your website to a newsletter to a resource, and then helping people is a really interesting kind of process. So we've talked about tools. Let's talk EdRoundtable strategy. And I know as an individual, you're the head teacher one day and the caretaker the next day, or even both on a day. Is there a strategic plan? Where do you want it to be in a year? Let's start simple.
By the end of next year, I want to be working ideally up to 200 schools, because then that would fill my week, my day really full.
And are you working alone, Ben, still? Have you got a couple of people to help you?
I'm working alone, although I've just started getting I found a couple of freelancers who are starting to do good work for me. So I did build the website myself.
Well done.
It's been a bit on the clunky side at times, and it hasn't quite done what I wanted it to. So there's a freelancer coming on board over the summer who's going to hopefully fix a lot of the issues.
So 200 schools in a year's time, maybe 1 or 2 secondary for the first time, do you think?
I would like to have a hardcore group of 20 secondaries would be good, because that would get them going. There's not as many secondaries are there out there, so out of the 20,000 schools, 25,000 schools, I think 20,000 of them are probably primary, and 5
you'd be
secondaries.
super busy if you get 20,000. So there's the online sessions, there's resources, there's newsletters, there's the annual conference, so to speak. Can I push you a bit further? In 3 years, what maybe let's talk about some pipe dream plans.
So in 3 years, I want it so that we've got head teachers groups, we've got teacher action groups, which are the schools together. But I want to get it to the point where there is a platform for individual teachers to come along and meet like-minded people and actually set up their own EdRoundtables groups, and then from that start to build the massive sharing of stuff, because there's so much experience. I want to give people, some of the schools we've now got to the point where they're running sessions and we're recording videos and we're putting them up on the website, so that currently individual members who sign up have got access to the school sessions that they did before. So with these sessions on reading, on oracy, on sports premium, on applying for an EHCP. So I want to get more of those sessions sort of videoed and recorded and up as well, so there becomes a bank of useful stuff.
I know that, and it's for me trying to do a kind of Mark Plan Teach series of online courses, I'd need to lock myself down for 2 or 3 weeks just to get that produced and knocked out. So it's hard, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And can you give us a sense of your working week? Obviously pandemic, we've both been stuck at home rather than in schools and stuff. But how often are you in schools on travels and?
I try and get out to the schools. So I go to. I've got a long distance, but was it last week before last? I was down in Cornwall, visiting a school in Cornwall. At
That's
the
a
end
long
of the
way
week,
from York.
Oh, it is, yeah. We turned it into a weekend away. We took my wife down,
Right.
said, right, we're having a weekend away. We go to the school on the Monday, and then we've got the rest of the day on the Monday. We've got the weekend
Nice.
as well. You've got to make it work for you, haven't you?
Yeah, you have to. You have to. So where else have you been?
I've been
recently?
to Dave McPartland's school, Flake Fleet, a couple of schools in Wigan, so Meadowfields and Worsley Mains. And then,
Okay. Any international jobs yet?
No, not yet. We'll work on
Not
it.
yet. Okay. Right. So for people listening, be familiar with the podcast. We've gone. We're 35 minutes in, Ben. We're doing very well, but I'm going to switch it to a little quick fire. You're old enough to remember Timmy Mallet, so you can't pause
Yeah,
or
go on then.
hesitate. I've got all my notes here from our whole conversation, all the different things you've said. So I'll try and do a little recap on different parts, and I'll see if I can catch you off guard in a moment. Okay, let's start with favourite Indiana Jones film.
Temple of Doom.
Okay. Advice to your young new teacher self would be?
Don't shout.
Okay. If I was Education Secretary of State, I would?
Challenge Ofsted, change it, get rid of it. More
What project are you working on today?
Today, I'm actually chatting to quite a few different people about various things they're doing to see how I can support and help.
Okay, great. What book are you reading for fun?
I suppose it's
Can't
this
say
one.
tribal leadership, is another
No,
one.
it's this one.
Okay, and it is for people listening.
Sorry, I've got to do that. Entangled Life. It's Merlin Sheldrake. It's
All right.
a book about mushrooms.
Okay, a book about mushrooms. Wow. Your dream job. Give me that wacky career you never had. So you've dabbled with archaeology. You've done loads of sales. You've done retail. You've quantity surveying. What's that dream job you never got?
Do you know what? At one point, I really wanted to be an interior designer.
Right. Okay. Nice. Not too wacky. What is your biggest career achievement to date?
I think it's actually EdRoundtables. I know it sounds daft, but I'm now built something that people really seem to love.
You
I love
absolutely
being part of
have.
it.
Advice for people currently working 90 hours a week.
Stop. Don't. I know it's easy to say, but find something else to do. If it's doing 90 hours a week, then your health, your life, your family, it's all suffering. Don't do it.
Yeah, and it's promoting doing all the things we shouldn't be doing. Okay, if we had, York's a great place. If we had 24 hours together, where would we go? What would we see? What would we do? What would we eat? What would we drink?
Oh, there's some really good curry houses in York. There's an Argentinian steakhouse.
Right, I like steak. Let's go. Right,
Serves superb Argentinian steak.
right. That's food. Where are we going, and what we're going to go and see?
You've got to do this. Got to do the walls. Got to go up the top of the Minster. If it's your first time in York, you've got to climb to the top of the tower and see the view. I use York as a base, so I think there's so much around Yorkshire itself that we'd probably head out to and see the sights and sounds. That's what I like to do. So
Yeah,
walk
it's
in
a
the
beautiful
malls.
part of the world. Now, let's try your sales strategy. Grab anything on your table.
Oh Christ!
Right
Do you know
now.
what? I've got random things on my table. Look at that.
Okay, right. You've got an Oral for people listening. There's a pack of Oral-B toothpaste. I want you to sell it to our listeners. Go.
Okay, so one of the main challenges that people have, when you smile and you feel really embarrassed about your smile, your yellow teeth, that bit of cabbage that always gets stuck there. The idea behind this is amazing stuff. It won't just give you that smile that you've always wanted. It may even find you your next partner.
Oh, there you go. Right. He didn't even give us a price, which is pretty good. So, okay. Who would you recommend I interview next, and why?
I have the pleasure of working with lots and lots of head teachers, some amazing head teachers. I think you could choose any one of them to have an interview with. But if you haven't chatted with Dave McPartland yet,
I haven't, no. I should contact
get him on board.
And give me the why.
What he's doing at his school is amazing. He is quite a humble guy as well. He's a worrier, so he's constantly stressed about it, and that's how, anyone who worries and stresses quite as much as he does tells me they really actually care passionately about what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay,
great
story.
Right, I'll contact David. So where can listeners find out more about you? Any links, websites, EdRoundtables? Where would they go?
The main place to find me directly is probably on Twitter, at EdRoundtables. My DMs are open, so if you've got any questions, just fire away, ask. You can check out the website, which is edrt.co.uk, which will direct to the longer website name. That's being done up this summer, though, so probably if you want to find out what's going on and what we're doing, come and speak to me.
Okay, now I'm gonna test your sales skills again. Can they get a discount if they say Teacher Toolkit?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm sure something might be able to be negotiated.
All right, well, let's see. So let's see if people listen to the end of this podcast and see if they come your way. Right, my final big question, Ben. What would you hope to be your legacy, your epitaph?
My epitaph. Yeah, if it was going to be written on my gravestone, it'd be sweary. So I won't repeat it. In terms of what leave behind, I don't know. I just want people to look back and say, do you know what? That was good work.
There you go. That's all we can all hope for, I suppose, isn't it? So, Ben, thank you very much for your time. What a great project you've got. It's great to see, I talked to a few people and I can see they're part of your network. And, when I created SLT Chat myself in 2011, that was because I had no one to talk to. And although it's a struggle for people to keep that Twitter chat up today, and Twitter's very different than it was 10 years ago, it's great to see people like yourself bringing school leaders together who are busy and need that time. So I guess for me, thank you for doing so. And thank you for your time. And so that's it, everyone. Ben Brown, EdRoundtables. Get involved, connect with Ben. And Ben, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Ross. Thank you for having me.